In one of the biggest moments of their young lives, Prince George and Princess Charlotte joined their parents behind their great-grandmother's coffin yesterday. Their brother, 4-year-old Prince Louis, didn't join the service, sparking the question, at what age should children attend family funerals?
Well, we're joined now by broadcaster Ateh Jewel, who says attending can make them more emotionally intelligent, and grief counsellor and author Dipti Tait, who says children under 10 just aren't ready. Dipti, let's start with you. I was watching yesterday, and I've got two boys that similar sort of age gap as George and Charlotte, and I quite enjoyed seeing the two of them chatting, taking in the scenario, being there, being a part of it. Clearly have been told very in detail what's happening, what's going on. Why do you consider that's a problem for children under 10?
So it's not necessarily the age that I've got a problem with. It's more about the emotional maturity of children. So in my opinion, you know, I think it's really important that parents and guardians of children are mindful of their specific children and whether or not it's, you know, up to them to make that call. And obviously in the case of George and Charlotte, they're used to public affairs. You know, that's their life. They don't really know anything different. So if we're comparing their lifestyle to non-royal children, you know, that's what we've got to be mindful of.
So do you think it's more of a problem because they're in the public gaze during this event, or less of a problem because they are used to and being sort of introduced to a life of duty?
Yes, and I think it's less of a problem for them because they're used to it. And it's about, I guess, what children are comfortable and familiar with, you know.
That's right. That is such a hugely important part of it, isn't it? Depending on the maturity of the child, is the child sort of capable of being able to take in what's going on around them and understanding it in terms that make sense to them? Because 10 is young.
I have 11-year-old twins, and I do think it's our job and responsibility as parents, as guardians, as caretakers, to really help navigate big feelings, big topics like life and death, and see that it's part of the journey of how we're living. I do think emotional intelligence and talking about these things is like a muscle that has to be exercised to get resilience. And, you know, I'm a child of the 80s. I was literally told by family members, put all your feelings in a box and file it away, which is the worst advice. And I think there's generations of people who've grown up quite repressed with the stiff upper lip. And I just think it's about being emotionally healthy and dealing and talking about it and grieving. Funerals are part of the grieving process, and I think they should be there.
Dipti, Louis didn't go. He's 4. And I think probably lots of people would agree that is very young, and therefore not being at the funeral is appropriate. But I wonder about the fact, Ben mentions, of course, these are 2 young children, but they were together, and that's important. Whereas some children, you know, going alone at the age of 7, obviously you're with the parents, but having someone of your own age there perhaps is a good thing?
Yes, and there was a really lovely moment where I saw little Charlotte tugging on George's sleeve and whispering in his ear.
Yes.
And I thought that was so lovely that they had each other and there was that sibling connection. So I do agree. But if one of them was on their own, you know, that would have been my concern. But I do agree with Ateh as well. It's, you know, I think we do need to build up this emotional intelligence in children, but the funeral probably isn't the right place to do that. It's about having death awareness discussions and conversations.
So the work's been done before you get there?
Yes.
Lots of you getting in touch with this. Lisa says, I think it's a good thing. It helps the children process their grief. Kath says, I had to take my 4-year-old great-granddaughter to her grandmother's funeral. There was no one to look after her. During the prayer, she looked up and asked, what's in the box? Everyone giggled. It broke the mood. The children need to be there, and it really put everyone else at ease. But then Kelly says, I took my then 7-year-old to my nan's funeral. They were very close. All these years later, it still affects him. He says he wanted to be there, but got really, really upset. It was a very difficult thing for him to have to go through.
I suppose it's, you know, what individual children are going to...
Has to be bespoke.
Yeah.
And having the conversations. I mean, I moved to the countryside when my kids were 6, and if you live in the countryside, we were discussing there's so much roadkill and there's so much life and death, and you know we were talking about squirrels and this, and you have those conversations on the school run. It should be part of daily life. What happens? And then you see a newborn lamb, and it's about being in touch with the life cycle. And I think the work goes on before the funeral. We should have these conversations all the time.
Thank you
Dipti,
both.
thank you for joining us. Still to come, Mel B's been newly honoured with an MBE, and she's going to be joining us next to tell us about the letter that she received from the Queen to congratulate her just a few months ago.
You're watching Good Morning Britain on ITV.